we go. So, topic today, what are the less obvious trends in wearable tech? I've got some esteemed panelists here, so should we just go down the line and introduce yourself and sort of say what you do?
Thanks, James. My name is Aarthi Ramamurthy, and the founder and CEO of Lumoid. Lumoid is a try-before-you-buy service for gadgets for consumer electronics, including wearables and IoT devices.
My name is Aaron Grant. I'm one of the co-founders of a company called Untitled Labs, and we make a product called the Myo armband, which is a wearable gesture control device. So it's an armband that you wear on your forearm that lets you wirelessly control your technology using natural hand gestures and motions.
Hi, I'm Sara Chipps, CEO and co-founder of JewelBots. JewelBots are smart friendship bracelets aimed at teenage girls. They use a mesh network to let girls send secret messages to each other and know where their friends are. They're also open source, so the girls can program them to do whatever they want.
Okay, my name is Peter Pauwels. I'm one of the founders of TomTom. I guess a lot of you know us from SatNav, GPS navigation, but we've been in the wearable space since 4 years. We've actually just announced our 4th generation GPS fitness watch, which does some really cool stuff with on the wearable side. Comes with built-in music streaming via Bluetooth to make working out real fun without having to bring that ever-growing smartphone. And it comes with continuous heart rate measurement as a great sensor to tell you how you're doing. We've also recently announced in the wearable space an action cam, the TomTom Bandit. And it's the first 4K self-editing action camera out there. You do the action, immediately after that you have a great movie that you can share. So we are all about removing friction and bringing fun to this space.
Great. So let's get right down to it. Trends in wearables. We've seen straps and colors, and we've been through the whole range of customization, but what are the real trends that are going to make a difference that people may not be so familiar with? Aarthi?
I think, so we started out end of last year, early this year, into wearables, that category of things. So we are a try-before-you-buy service, which means we send out all types or most kinds of wearable devices that's in the market, US only. And one of the trends that I'm seeing as a company for us, as we cater to more and more users, is wearables are becoming more and more inconspicuous, not just from how they look and how they behave, but from how they are integrated into your day-to-day life. You used to have, you would wear a band that was specific for fitness trackers or did one thing or two things at best, and now you have watches that they look like a watch and they do everything else. The gesture control, you're seeing that where it's a part of your day-to-day life and it helps you solve specific problems without conspicuously being a wearable. Same with JewelBots, it looks like something that you'd want to wear. It's like a bracelet, but it does much more than that. And so that's one of the biggest trends that I'm seeing, where it's really inconspicuous.
Have you seen much interest in the sort of trend of analog watches with the tech sort of built in? Is that sort of resonating with your customers?
I think it's just starting out. We saw a huge interest that surfaced because of in Mobile World Congress last year and this year. We saw a few watches that came out that looked a lot like analog watches, but tried to do much more. I think it's still got a little ways to go to become usable from a smartwatch side of things. I think it looks really beautiful, but it's not as functional as it should be. And I think it's just getting started. It's very nascent, and it's going to get there.
Aaron, what have you found that sort of resonating with people as you're sort of out there talking to people?
Yeah, so one of the things that we think a lot about at Untitled Labs is how can we improve the ways in which humans and technology interact. And this is a really interesting question to think about in the context of wearables, just because you're not going to interact with a wearable device on your arm with a mouse and keyboard. And so I think a lot of the trends that we're going to see in terms of wearables and the way in which they evolve is going to be based around how can we interact with those wearables more easily? How can we make them more useful by, like you said, having them kind of integrated into our day-to-day lives even more? And then also in the case of something like the Myo armband, how can we use wearable devices to more efficiently and easily interact with the digital world around us? So I think what we're And this might be more of a trend that I think we'll start to see over the next few years rather than what we're necessarily seeing already. But it's really moving towards wearables that have some focus on the human-computer interaction aspect of things.
Okay. Sarah, your product sort of speaks to JewelBot sort of speaks to a much different target market to everyone else here. So, what does that offer you a unique perspective on trends that are coming forward? Because these are the wearable users of the future, and their sort of experiences are still to be sort of shaped.
Yeah, I think we're all really affected by the trend setting of teenage girls. Yeah, I think wearables are a really interesting time right now. When movies first came out, people used to go to movie theaters to watch horses run backwards, or they'd go and watch hundreds of people coming out of a factory because they'd never seen anything like that in their lives. And finally movies came out, and that's what we experience now. And when Coke first came out, doctors were prescribing it, which is really ill-advised now. It's super popular. So I think wearables is experiencing a similar renaissance where, when they first came out, everything was a fitness tracker that just had an accelerometer. And now so many different things are coming out. I know when we go to schools, especially the more affluent schools in the US, we see girls wearing Fitbits, or they'll be wearing a Jawbone Up. And we'll be like, oh, did you work out a lot today? Or how are your steps going? And they look at us and they're like, and we're like, oh, do you try to get your best record or whatever? And they still look at us like blank. And we're like, well, why are you wearing a Jawbone Up? And they're just like, I don't know, it's a wearable, it's cool. So I think it's really interesting, reaching other markets and exploring what we could do with wearables.
It's actually an interesting point, too. I have known a bunch of people who wear smartwatches, and even if it's dead in the morning, they'll put it on and continue to wear it throughout the day, often for days at a time without charging it.
That's great.
Peter, what have you found? Because obviously you guys have been in the fitness space for a while now, and with trackers and GPS. So what's next? What are you going to surprise us with?
Well, I think if you look at an important on the stream of what we'll see happening is much better analysis of all the data that's being generated. The amount of sensors that we are wearing in our proximity or on our body or in our cars, and actually kind of what we have is the amount of data that's generating is now becoming so much. And we're still looking at user experiences that are being brought to the market today that look at the data in a fairly one-dimensional way. And there's the opportunity to look at different data sources, different sensor data sources from different devices. And to bring in also more context by looking, for example, at your agenda and possibly at whatever you're doing with apps on your mobile phone. And to fuse that data, bring more context, look at it in a multidimensional way, cross-referencing data, and trying to find more meaning so that we can start asking ourselves questions at a higher level of abstraction. So it's not, do I do enough steps in a day, but am I really fit?
Sticking with you, Peter, sort of after TomTom Spark is one of its main sensors is heart rate, and that's been a big trend over 2015. Heart rate coming to a lot of different wearables now. What's next after heart rate? Are there other biometrics that are worth tracking that can add to our sort of daily picture, or does it sort of stop at heart rate?
The good news, it doesn't stop at heart rate, of course. It's what's fascinating is that with the optical instrument that we have here and that others have, if you look at red light, green light, infrared, white light, the signals that are coming back allow us to read a lot more from the human body, and you're seeing biomathematicians coming up with a lot of very interesting pieces of information, lactate, oxygen, glucose, and other metrics, and starting to model that around what happens with the body at say a more emotional level. So we can start looking at emotion, excitement, and these kind of things.
Stress has been one that comes up quite a lot now.
Yeah, And that will then again drive to a new level of innovation and a deeper understanding of what we're doing with that technology.
Aarthi, you talked about sort of wearables becoming less conspicuous. Do you think we're going to see a rise of invisibles coming? Do people want the functionality without the form, do you think? Or do you think there'll always be a place for things to look good?
Both. I think it really depends on the context and what you're trying to measure. One thing that we were saying is fitness trackers no longer look like fitness trackers. They look like, everything like a bracelet or a band that you would wear otherwise. You wear a smartwatch, it tells you the time, but it also does much more than that. And then you're going to find specific use cases, like Peter was just mentioning. It goes beyond the heart rate monitor, but those, I think, could be a part of your clothing that you're wearing, or things that you would measure maybe a few times a day, but you don't need to have it on at all times kind of thing. You would wear it, but not all the time. We do things like blood pressure monitor today, which do that. You don't need to be measuring blood pressure at any time all the time. But when you do want it, and there is a huge set of people who are interested in that, then in that case, we have it available.
A lot of sort of wearable themes come back to sports quite a lot. You mentioned a load of sort of health and well-being biometrics there. Sara, you also, that's been a very clear use case in wearables so far, health and fitness. You're talking to people or an audience where that is just, as you've mentioned, isn't just not on their radar whatsoever. How are you communicating benefits to people, and how are you reaching outside of sort of early adopters?
Yeah, well, for us, I mean, we didn't, the original functionality we came up with JewelBots was we were going to make a bracelet and girls could change the color to match their clothes every day, because I thought that sounded great. And so we go to schools all the time to talk to girls, and when we started doing that, they would be like, that sounds really stupid, I would never do that. Okay, so we talked to them for a while about what was important to them, So the functionality we ended up with is stuff that they've thought of. We studied their everyday lifestyle, the things that excited them, and just that tribal mentality of that age of my friends are the most important thing to me right now, and they're how I identify myself, was what we heard from them all the time. So really, we didn't come up with the functionality, they did. And so that's how we're doing it, because we're not building it for ourselves, we're building it. I was a 12-year-old girl, but it's a long time ago, so I don't really trust my instincts here.
Coding's a big part of what you're doing as well, isn't it? Is that is that an easy sell for to be better at coding to that sort of audience? Do they get on board with that? Or?
It's really interesting, actually. In the beginning, no. In fact, I anticipated never to be, but they're getting a lot of education in school that this part of their lives is really important. So what I'm starting to hear from them is, wow, this is really neat and a really great way for me to learn this. We're trying to model ourselves after Minecraft, where Minecraft was something awesome and huge that lots of kids got really into. It's also open source, so you have all these 8-year-old, tiny server admins out there, because they want to do this, that host their own worlds for their friends. So we're not leading with the coding part to the kids, because it's very possible they won't, but we just want to make it possible so that many of them do.
Yeah. Aaron, how are you finding sort of getting beyond the early adopter, because your sensor that is quite a niche product at the moment, isn't it? So you're obviously talking to people in niche industries. How are you sort of preparing for the sort of release?
Yeah, so there's a few kind of things that we've done. The first one has just been opening the product up to not just developers, but early adopters of all kinds. Yeah. So what we found when we launched the Myo armband was that there were a lot of people out there who had a use case in mind. There's some software they used or some hardware device that they wanted to control, and we obviously didn't have the resources to go and build support for all of those things. But the problem was a lot of those people weren't coders. They didn't, they weren't going to go and crack open Xcode and start writing an iPhone app. So what we did was made a bunch of tools to make it really easy for them to just kind of point and click and map the output of the Myo armband to things like mouse and keyboard commands, or in the music space, things like MIDI commands.
Yeah.
So if you're a DJ and you don't know anything about coding, you probably know how to use MIDI. You probably have some synthesizers set up. Maybe you have it, if you're Armin van Buuren, you have it hooked up to your whole crazy effects setup.
Yeah.
But you can use that really easily to take the Myo armband and integrate it into all this existing stuff. And it's by looking at those applications that people have been using it for that we've kind of been able to say, okay, something like presentations, something like using it in the home when you're sitting on your couch and you want to control Netflix. These are things that people are starting to use it for, and we can then go as a company and make those experiences even better. And that's kind of the way that we've approached that.
Peter, what we still got to get right? As a wearables industry, do we still have to perfect?
So for me, there are two things that are really staring me in the face when I think about that question. And so one of them is, whilst I'm really impressed by what Sara is doing with coming something that's really new and understanding how, in this case, the girls really love to have it. I think if we're looking at going for, say, beyond early adopters and addressing really the rest of the world, we need to understand they're not like everyone is in this room who is perfectly willing to slap on all kind of devices onto their body, but more conventional people. And that means that I think that if you look at what we're doing with sensors and bringing them onto the body and into our daily lives, we need to think about how we can bring them into the stuff that people are already used to, so clothing, apparel, accessories, glasses, earpieces, and whatever you have. So in a way, start to make them more and more invisible and less conspicuous. We can't force fashion on the whole globe. Then another important thing is that kind of goes hand in hand. In order to make that happen, we need to solve battery lifetime. So I'm very excited about some of the newer battery technologies that are coming along, and around about a number of initiatives around ambient energy harvesting that will really make those changes happen.
Aarthi, smart straps, that's been a big trend. Apple even getting involved in that. Is that something you think customers get on board with?
I think so. I think there's always going to be a target audience for smart straps. I think it's nascent, but it's going to.
What do you think are the main sort of use cases for smart straps? Battery tech.
Probably, yeah. I mean, one thing that wearables today, they're doing a reasonably better job, but there's still the form meets function aspect that's still not there yet. It looks really beautiful, but it's not super functional, and vice versa. It's super functional, but looks really ugly. And so getting them to talk to each other, form meeting function, I think that's where things like smart straps, like battery charger and built, bunch of items. I just saw the TomTom watch there, and having the GPS receiver right at the front, I think it's a great idea. Just things like that.
Great. Well, thanks, guys, for taking the time to chat to us today, and thank you very much.
Thank you.